Every day I wake up, wake your ass up.
The Breakfast Club.
Y'all finished or y'all done?
Morning, everybody. It's DJ NV, Jess Hilarious, Charlamagne the Guy. We are the Breakfast Club. Loren LoRosa is here as well. We got a special guest in the building.
One of my favorite authors ever.
He has a new book, Wisdom Takes Work, Learn, Apply, Repeat. Ladies and gentlemen, Ryan Holiday. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
How you feeling this morning?
Doing awesome.
What book is this? Number what?
I don't know.
You don't even... Is it 10? It might be
15, 16,
God,
something like that.
damn.
It's about what, the fifth or sixth time he's been up here.
You guys have been very good to me.
Yeah, we like having you, man. The Wisdom Takes Work, Learn, Apply, Repeat. And in the book, you argue that wisdom is the virtue on which all other virtues depend. How did you arrive at that belief?
So the 4 virtues of Stoic philosophy, which I write about, are courage, discipline, justice, and wisdom. They're all separate, but they're related in that, wisdom tells us when and how to apply the others. I think it doesn't matter, how good your heart is if you don't have the wisdom, the intelligence to know how to bring it into the world. Or, courage is important, but you could be courageous for something real dumb. So wisdom is the sort of layer on top that we have to apply to all our other skills and assets.
Well, it's one thing to do the research. Was there a specific moment in your life that made you realize it?
That wisdom was important?
Yeah.
Well, I think we've all met some smart people that do dumb things. And I think we've all done dumb things. And you look at wisdom as being the sort of the key to not just a successful life, but a good life, right? You can be really good at what you do, and then you can blow it all up, or you can be profoundly unhappy, or how many smart people are lacking in self-awareness. So I just think wisdom is the sort of piece that brings it all together. And I think one of the problems is that we assume wisdom is this thing that just happens, right? We go, sure, school is important, but experience is important. Wisdom comes with age. It's no guarantee. I've met a lot of dumb old people too.
Absolutely. I was always taught smart people learn from their own mistakes, wise people learn from the mistakes of others. I completely agree that wisdom is a lost art. I think you have a lot of smart people. I don't think you have a lot of wise people nowadays.
Yeah. And I mean, you need this not just to be successful, as I was saying, but like, how do you not fall for demagogues, or how do you not fall for scams? How do you rise above the noise? How do you separate fact from fiction? Wisdom, I think, is, there's this word discernment, right? The art of discernment. Like, how many people can really see the difference between good and really good, right and almost right, truth and complete nonsense? That, to me, is the missing skill of our time.
We're doomed, guys. It's over. Hey, pack it up. Go home.
We're not doomed.
Yes, we are.
No. I think everybody eventually has something in their life that wakes them up to that. Whether it's at a different, like, might be young, might be older, but you're always taught that like wisdom comes with age.
Yes.
That saying. So you probably hate that saying, huh?
Yeah. Churchill was joking about this guy he didn't like, and he said that although he occasionally stumbled over the truth, he quickly picked himself up and carried on as if nothing had happened. Right? So I think life is always teaching you, right? But you don't have to hear it. And so life will sometimes whisper, life will tell you nicely things that you need to know. And then when we ignore that, it becomes louder and louder louder until sometimes, you have to learn from some kind of catastrophic failure or catastrophe. And so, your point that we can learn from the experiences of others, that's the cheap, effective, efficient way to do it. And then a lot of us go, no, I'd rather figure it out on my own. And that costs not just them, but the people around them. Like when we're late to learning lessons, that doesn't just affect us, but that affects the people that work for us, that affects our family, that affects the people who, bear the consequences of that, painful lesson that we chose to learn the hard way.
I think wisdom has to come from age, though.
Sure.
Like, regardless. I mean, regardless of what you can meet a stupid old person, but there is some wisdom that comes from what they're doing. Whether if they work at a plant, whatever they do at the house, there is some type of wisdom that they can continue on to give to somebody else.
Well, the root of the word idiot is somebody in ancient Greece who did not participate in public life. So, you can read everything you want, and you can read a lot, and that'll make you smarter than the average person. But if you're not engaged and involved, you're going to miss some things that you can only learn from experience. Da Vinci would sign his letters, a disciple of experience. You have to learn by doing. You have to put yourself out there. And that's why I say it's learn, apply, repeat. So you learn the things, you hear the lessons, you study, you go to school, then you got to go out in the world. And you find that a lot of what you learn now has to be applied, or a lot of what you learned, you didn't actually understand it. And then you repeat that cycle over and over and over again. And each time that's a positive feedback loop that's making you smarter and better.
They talk about education. A lot of people, and I'm seeing this a lot more and more, that people are not necessarily wanting to go to college.
Sure.
They feel like the education that they get in college, they can be taught more through life experiences. And they feel like the wisdom that those professors have might be outdated.
Sure.
What they're teaching. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, look, I'm a proud college dropout, so I'm all about it. There is and always has been a difference between school and education. So I think the problem is, if you don't know what you're trying to do, how do you know what the best form of schooling or education is for you?
I say that all the time, by the way. I think it's stupid that we force kids to get out of high school and say, go to college and pick a major immediately, when they don't necessarily know what they want to do. If you know what you want to do, that's great. But there's been times where kids were like, I don't know. Like, don't make me pick a major and make me take these courses if I don't necessarily know what I want to do in life.
And especially by the way, nowadays, when we live in a world where we're kind of preparing for a future that won't even exist, because the AI going to be having all the jobs anyway.
Well, and look, spending a couple $100,000 over 4 years is an expensive way to figure out what you want to do.
Absolutely.
Especially if at the end of it, you find out that what you want to do is something that didn't require college. For me, I met Robert Greene, our mutual friend, and then I realized that's what I wanted to do. And then I said, well, am I going to keep going to college, or am I going to go directly learn from the person who's done it? So I'm a big believer in apprenticeships and mentorships. You got to find your teachers. Sometimes those are college professors. Sometimes they're business executives. Sometimes they're, your neighbor down the street. But you got to find who can teach you how to do what you want to do.
And when you started off as an apprentice with Robert Greene, one of the first things he put you on was 48 Laws of Power, right?
No, I worked on the 50th Law. 50th Law. Like the first thing I did was transcribe in a world before AI. I transcribed hours and hours of interviews between him and 50. And so that was part of my education. It's just listening, not just listening to it, but having to painstakingly type it all out. And so I got this masterclass in not just, how he worked, but all the people around him. But what I was actually learning was like how you put a book together. And Robert showed me how to research a book and how to write and then how to operate in the industry. You want to find the people who are further ahead in what you want to do and then do it. Although to be fair, like in college, I think most professors are professionals in what they do. They're not just teachers. They're researchers, they're experts, they had a previous experience where they did the thing. And, every week they have office hours where they have to sit there and meet with the students, and nobody comes. So I thought the crazy thing for me is like, I didn't go into the library at my college until after I dropped out and I was writing my first book, because I was like, oh, wait, this is an incredible free resource that I was too busy, doing the college kid thing to take advantage of. So all this stuff is there. It's just, you got to be self-directed and self-motivated.
In Wisdom Takes Work, you write that we live in an age where reaction and idle chatter are rewarded and restraint and thoughtfulness are unfashionable. Can you talk to these digital dickheads about what you mean on that, please?
Yeah, I mean, look, social media is by definition talking and not listening.
That's right.
Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, he said, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. And when you're talking, what you're mostly doing is not listening. So we have this enormous sort of media culture that's about chatter and noise, and it's not about thoughts and reflection. And I mean, even how much of what we listen to and talk about is what's happening right now, not the historical context or the bigger picture. And I think it's not that there's anything wrong with news or podcasts or social media, but if you don't have like the historical basis, the larger context, you're not going to know what any of it means. Truman's famous line was, there's nothing new in the world but the history you don't know. And so most of what's happening now has happened before, but if it's the first time you're hearing about it or experiencing it, you're going to have the wrong read on it because you think it's like somehow unprecedented, but in fact, it's very precedented.
Some of this is unprecedented, though. A lot of what we're seeing right now.
You think so?
At least in America. I guess if you can rely on historical context.
That's what I mean.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
gotcha.
I mean, this archetype, you want to look at a Donald Trump. Donald Trump exists in half a dozen Shakespearean plays.
Yeah.
He exists in Greek tragedies. Yeah. There are historical precedent after historical precedent for guys like that. I mean, one of the interesting lines in Marcus Aurelius' Meditations, he says that he thanks his philosophy teacher for teaching him not to fall for every smooth talker. So like the idea of the demagogue, the idea of the strong man, the idea of the con man is as old a thing as there has ever been. Mm-hmm. And part of the reason I think people have trouble spotting it or seeing it for what it is that they don't know that this has happened again and again and again. Mm-hmm. And therefore they don't know how badly this ends.
Mm-hmm. Is he a smooth talker? I wouldn't consider him a smooth talker.
I mean, he's not smooth in the sense that, he's particularly good at it, like he's this soaring orator, but he's really good at telling aggrieved people what they want to hear. And that's what demagogues have always done and always do. They point to the other and they say, your problems are not your fault. They're these people's fault. And I'm going to be your weapon of vengeance against them. Mm-hmm. That's as old as, political strongmen have ever been.
Mm-hmm. What's a second brain?
Second brain? So, and I learned this from Robert Greene, the writer, is like you have to be recording and synthesizing the knowledge that you get. So it's not enough to have a mentor. It's not enough to read books. It's not enough to listen to podcasts or watch documentaries. How are you collecting and organizing this information? So like I'm reading the book right now. And I'm taking notes. So my pen's flying over. I'm taking notes.
Book, Ryan.
It's a big one. This is Jill Lepore, History of the United States. It's a great book. And I'm going to record this stuff. I'm going to read it. I'm going to take my time with it, and then I'm going to break this down into note cards, which I organize, and then that's what I use in my writing, in my videos, in my talks. So I think if you're not keeping a journal, if you're not recording the information that you're consuming or learning, where's it going? It's just going in a black hole somewhere. Mm-hmm. So that's what they call the second brain.
Gotcha. What's an information diet?
Ooh, well, what do you, just like they say garbage in, garbage out, right? Like, what are you eating? What are you consuming? We understand that what we eat affects our health, affects our mood, affects our happiness. And yet people just consume straight garbage directly in their ears, directly in their eyes, all day. Mm-hmm. And I think, you definitely see this on the right, this just sort of depraved garbage information diet of like the worst slop and nonsense, whether it's coming from podcasts or Twitter, or what, if you're not protecting what's going in your brain, you're going to destroy your brain. And I think we see this happening. Like, no one should watch as much cable news or spend as much time on social media as Donald Trump does. And so you're watching it degrade. I think the most telling example of this is like, at one point in his life, Elon Musk was reading Soviet rocket manuals to figure out physics and space and the aeronautics industry. And now he just spends all his time on Twitter, mainlining memes, and he's insane, right? He broke his brain. And that's why your information diet matters. It's not just the quality, but it's also like if you consume too much, your brain will break. You got to have some discipline and boundaries too.
But if it's like if it's habitual, right? Like how do you manage the diet after you already broke your brain? You know what I'm saying?
I remember growing up as a kid and my friends' parents watched so much Fox News, it was literally burned in the corner of the TV. And that's not healthy. Yeah. Like, that's just not healthy. So you gotta say, hey, this is when I get my news. This is when I get my information. This is who I trust to give me my information. And I think people consume way too much real-time information and don't go back far enough. I think books are better. I think conversations with real human beings are better.
I agree.
There's this recency bias. And so much of what's happening right now is ephemeral and trivial or developing. You know what I mean? Like, you shouldn't be watching the news as it's happening unless you are a hedge fund trader or you hold elected office. Like, wait for them to figure it out. Then check in and get that information and check it against your larger historical sense of what things mean and how the world works.
It just always feels like things are moving so fast sometimes.
Yeah.
And for a person like me, when you talk about like how you download like information, if I'm watching the news when things are happening, I retain it way better than if I have to go back and like sit with it sometimes, because I feel like it's a lived experience.
You think so?
That's just kind of what I've been experiencing and working in news. Like I literally remember January 6th when they went into the Capitol because CNN was on and I watched it. So when I was able to talk about it, I watched it. I talked about it from me watching it in real time.
Yeah.
Versus when I go back and read things, it's just different.
No, I get that. I think like sports is a great example. It's like you could watch Stephen A. Smith all week. That's not going to change what's going to happen on Sunday. Like what's going to happen on Sunday is what's going to happen on Sunday. Mm-hmm. And so we sometimes conflate like speculating about what's going to happen, debating about what happened, rumors are this is what's happening. And that's not the actual like nut of it. Mm-hmm. And I think we consume all this sort of stuff and commentary around it and not like the main thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I could see that.
Can wisdom protect you from being influenced? Because I do agree with you with the information diet, but I can look at a whole bunch of stuff throughout the week and not be influenced by it.
Sure.
I think it's the influence of it that I think is, worse than just consuming it.
Yeah, and look, I think part of this comes down to media literacy, technological literacy. I mean, look, something like 20% of Americans think that chocolate milk comes from brown cows. Like,
no.
If that's where your starting point is, you're gonna have trouble. Like when you are reading a complicated news story telling you why something happened or what it means. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you have to have a certain amount of intelligence and savvy to be able to separate, what. And I do think that's why it's such a battle for attention. Is that some people are up for grabs and some people aren't. And I think you want to be one of the people that's not up for grabs because you sort of know what's what. To me, that's like a good working definition of wisdom. Like, I know what's what. I know what humans are. I know how humanity works. I know history. I know enough about the world that I can. Look, we can all be made fools and suckers, but the bigger basis, protects you against the day-to-day barrage for sure.
You really know people that think chocolate milk come from a black cow?
Brown cow.
That is a statistical fact. It is nuts. That is like,
you said 20%?
It's like 20%.
That's a lot of
the
people.
same number.
What book was that, Ryan? Which one was that? That's crazy.
It is crazy. But you realize that not everyone's working with the same toolkit.
Yeah.
And that makes it hard to go through life.
Mm-hmm. How do you attack what book you're going to write about? Like, this was about wisdom takes work. How do you know, I'm going to go this way on this book and next time it's about this one? So how did you pick this book and what stood out about this that made you want to write about wisdom taking work?
It's 7% too.
7%?
7%.
It should be 0%.
Yeah, that is true. But it's 7%.
Who's drinking milk either? But look, it's I've been doing a series. I did courage, discipline, justice, and wisdom. Those are the 4 virtues. So I knew that was the arc. That's what Stoicism is based on.
Correct.
But I wanted to save wisdom for last because it strikes me as the hardest, and it strikes me as the thing in exactly what we're talking about, this world not just of lots of noise and information, but also AI, like the most essential. I think that's the interesting thing about AI is people are acting like it's going to be this magical thing that solves every problem or can teach you anything. But in fact, what you need, not just to be able to take advantage of AI, because it requires you to prompt it, which means you have to be able to ask it smart questions. Mm-hmm. But like, if you don't have some sense of wisdom, some sense of knowledge, you're going to be vulnerable to a thing that, by the way, hallucinates a significant percentage of the time. That's wrong all the time. Mm. So you're going to, like, this idea of needing wisdom, needing a good bullshit filter is like more important than ever, because AI is going to eat you alive if you don't have a sense of reality. Mm-hmm. People don't.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Another claim you make in the book, you say cultivating wisdom requires mental struggle, and there's no shortcut for that. So what does mental struggle look like from a practical sense?
Well, look, like books are basically free. You know, you can get them from the library. The amount of wisdom in a book is incredibly cheap. But it still takes work. You got to wrestle with the book. You got to read it. You got to put the time in.
That's right.
You know, I think it's not just the struggle to, you know, make the time to do the work, to read, to go to class, whatever. But then it's also wrestling with big questions. Like if you think life is black and white, if you think it's easy, if you think everyone is trying to tell you the truth all the time, I think, again, you're going to find yourself pretty vulnerable. So it is struggle. It's a battle. It's a battle against ignorance. It's a battle against misinformation. It's a battle against your own biases. I think one of the things the Stoics remind us is that, like, your mind is not always your friend. We all have prejudices. We all have biases. We all have mental shortcuts that we do that prevent, ego being another one, that gets in the way of us learning and seeing what we need to see. So you got to struggle against yourself too.
Absolutely. And I like the subtitle too: learn, apply, repeat. Yeah. Like you're saying, that it has to be a cycle, not a one-time event.
Yeah, like you become a student when you're young, but that's all sort of forced upon us. But to me, the essential question is, how long do you stay a student? There's a story about Marcus Aurelius. He's a philosopher king. He's the wisest man in Rome, the most powerful man in Rome. And he's seen leaving the palace. And a friend stops him and he says, you know, sir, where are you going? And he says, I'm off to see Sextus the philosopher to learn that which I do not yet know. And the man says, this is amazing. Here we have the philosopher king still taking up his tablets and going to school. But that's why he was a philosopher king. And I like that he was going to the teacher instead of sending the teacher to him. So there is something about staying hungry, but also staying humble. Like, you know, if you're a know-it-all, you're right. Because if you're a know-it-all, you know all that it is possible for you to know. But if you focus on what you don't know, if you focus on how much there is left to know, then you're always going to get better. And that, you know, think about what the Socratic method is. It's asking questions. Socrates doesn't go around Athens, you know, lecturing people. He goes around asking them questions, trying to find things out. And so this decision to become a student is part one. But part two is staying a student and remaining a student all of your life.
Well, okay.
I was going to ask, with your books, it seems like your target, like, or your goal is to allow people to think freely, but like have an educated like base that they're pulling from.
Yeah.
How hard is it becoming for you to go around teaching all of this in this like time with this administration? I saw the thing that happened with you at the Naval Base and they're canceling your lecture that you do. Yeah,
I've been doing a series of lectures at the Naval Academy on the cardinal virtues for the last 4 years. And the last one was canceled. I was supposed to lecture about wisdom. And I was going to talk about Admiral James Stockdale, who's a famous graduate there, who famously took a course on Marxism at Stanford before he was shot down in Vietnam and sent to a Marxist prison. And the idea is, like, you want to learn from the enemy. You want to understand what they think, or else you're vulnerable to brainwashing and propaganda. Actually, Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, said this. He said, we want to study like a spy in the enemy's camp. So I was supposed to give this lecture, and like a couple weeks before I went, they started removing books from the library at orders of the Secretary of Defense and the President because they were too woke or pro-DEI. And I I own a bookstore. I can't get up there and give a lecture about wisdom as they're literally removing books from a library. So I was going to mention it. And they found out and they said, look, if you got to remove those slides or you can't come talk here.
Damn.
And this is one of the elite universities in this country. These are people who someday are going to be piloting fighter jets or aircraft carriers or nuclear submarines. Like these cannot be sensitive little snowflakes or we're in big trouble. These are people who are going to not just have to make highly complex technical decisions, but profoundly ethical and moral questions. And yet here we are protecting them, not just from potentially political books, but Maya Angelou's memoirs was one of the books that they removed, probably because no one in Hegseth's office has read it, knows anything about it. He probably ChatGPT told him it was a woke book, so he wanted to remove it. So I felt I couldn't do that, and that's, by the way, where all the virtues are interrelated, because it's not just knowing that book banning is stupid and reckless and dangerous, but then I have to decide, do I want to preserve my access? Or do I want to say what I think is true? And also, do you want the, Secretary of Defense to be mad at you? Mm-hmm. That's where courage comes in. But then also justice. Like, hey, it's the right thing, so you do the right thing. But yeah, we are in a dangerous moment. Do you know the word kakistocracy? No. So like oligarchy, democracy, right? Different types of governmental system. Kakistocracy is government by the stupidest. And that's what we are facing in this moment. People who are not just not smart, but actively afraid of and angry at and resentful of people who have competence and knowledge because they're fundamentally threatened by it.
Are they? So we have to replace the term idiocracy then?
Yeah. I mean, idiocracy, it's a similar way to say the same thing.
Okay.
But I mean, I don't think the American people are that stupid. I think we are in a moment where we have elected a number of officials who are actively stupid and deliberately ignorant. And
what you said is interesting because you said they're resentful of people who are smart. And to me, I'm like, I don't think they believe anybody's actually smarter than them.
There's a hilarious list of all the people that Trump has said he is smarter than, and it's like basically everyone that's ever existed.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but it's this idea that like my feelings are more true or stronger than your expertise. So it's this antipathy towards expertise, credentialism. And look, like the experts are wrong all the time. I'm not saying they're flawless, but like you don't want to be driving the smartest, most qualified, most experienced people out of the armed forces, out of the government, out of business, and that's the sort of bent that we're on. It's going to end very, very badly.
Ooh, listen, I want to ask you about that. This then, if do you think the political climate made them feel that way? Because for the last 10 years, all the political pundits and the strategists, they've just been wrong.
They have been wrong. Like, and that so it's like, do you know this idea of negative capability? Negative capability is the idea, can you hold two opposing ideas in your head? So on the one hand, the experts are wrong a lot. On the other hand, expertise is still really important. So you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. So you got to go, hey, why were the experts wrong about this, that, or the other? What biases or tendencies do they have that you got to protect against? And at the same time, you got to elect qualified people. You don't go, hey, that guy talks about the military on Fox News on the weekends. Let's put him in charge of the most powerful military in the world. I mean, he's not even qualified to be the spokesperson for the Pentagon, let alone running the Pentagon. And so you gotta go, hey, here's what I believe, here's what I think is important, and then still respect, wisdom, intelligence, credentials, experience.
I want to ask you, what role does listening more than talking play when you're in like a culturally diverse setting, or when you're sitting with somebody with a different ideology and you're listening to them?
Yeah.
But at some point you might be like, well, that's wrong with some bullshit. You just keep listening or you interject. Like,
well, that is that idea of negative capability is like realizing, for instance, I have to think about this with my kids. My kids are never wrong about their feelings because they're their feelings. Now, I might feel differently. It might not change. Hey, you got to go to school. You got to do X, Y, or Z. But like, your opinion is your opinion. And so I think what strong people are able to do, resilient people are able to do, wise people are able to do is understand that people feel differently about different things, have different opinions about different things, and to be interested and curious about that without necessarily changing your mind all of the time. So that I think diversity is strength in the sense that you want to bring as many different opinions and viewpoints and worldviews into the equation. But at the end of the day, you do have to decide what you think, what you feel, what you're going to do, especially in a position of leadership. Like the leader ultimately has to listen to everyone and then make and own the decision.
But it's based on what their opinions are based off of, meaning your opinion or how you feeling could be a certain way.
Yeah.
But if it's based off of some bullshit that's not true,
yes,
then your feeling is kind of wrong. You know
yes,
what I mean?
and I think that's our problem with expertise is people are like, well, but I don't want that to be true. And it's like, okay, that's great, and I respect that you don't like it, but it is what it is.
Right. Wow. Yeah.
Well, Ryan Holiday, ladies and gentlemen, new book, Wisdom Takes Work.
Learn, apply,
repeat. It's available right now. And thank you for joining us.
Always a pleasure when you pull up, Ryan.
You're the best. Thank you, guys.
Next time, bring some chocolate milk from a brown cow.
I do have a brown cow. It does not make chocolate milk.
It's the Breakfast Club. Good morning.
Hold up. Every day I wake up, wake your ass up. The Breakfast Club.
Y'all finished or y'all done?